Ning nang nong no, ning nang nong no, ning nang. Well, welcome to. I had to do that because that's been in my head all morning. Just that part of that song. Welcome everyone to another episode of Cranked and Ranked. We're back to ranking some shit, and today we're going to be ranking. Well, before I do that, let me introduce everybody. I am Old Head or Steven, and with me as always is Mr. Eddie Sparxx. Hello, sir.
Yo, what's up?
What up? So today we're going to tackle a discography that I feel like, there are some bands that people, you like them or you think they're okay. There's not really any sort of extreme emotions involved with the opinions. I feel like with this band, which we're starting today, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, I feel like some people have very extreme opinions on them.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. It'll be an interesting ranking. We're actually going to do this in two parts because they have 11 albums. And so today we're going to be doing our bottom 6 Chili Peppers albums, and the next episode will be the top 5. And they're an interesting band because I actually was looking forward to doing this with you because this is the first band that we've done, I think, that is still very relevant today. Like, they're not a legacy band that just plays the hits.
Yeah.
They've continued to release hit albums after you've been born. Like,
I think what it is as well is they're one of those career 180 bands that like halfway through their career had a complete second wind doing something completely different to how they started.
Yeah, there was a definite shift, but I think it's cool that this is a band that was out and I was very into when I was younger, but they were also still doing shit when you were coming of age, and even today. I mean, they got an album coming, who knows how soon, but they got one coming. But this will be an interesting one because I think that I'm pretty divided in their stuff, which I guess a lot of people are. So as we normally start off, before we do anything, let's start talking about where our Chili Peppers experiences began. So mine started in, I think, 1990. 1990 was a big year for me because that's when I really started to get into all kinds of music and became very independent in my own thinking of what I wanted to listen to. So I was like 13 years old, something like that, or 12. Fuck, yeah, I think I was 12. Doesn't matter. But I remember two specific things. One, on one of our cable access television stations, they played a live concert of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and I had no idea who they were, but I remember at the end of the concert for their encore, they came out with nothing on except socks covering on their dicks.
Yeah.
And I just remember the music being I was like, this is like funky, but it's like punk and it's weird. And like, these guys seem like they probably do a whole lot of drugs. And it just seemed like dangerous, weird music that didn't, all of a sudden I was like, because I was getting into bands like that didn't have a normal set way of doing things. I was already into Faith No More. And so I was open to this world of bands that didn't quite fit in. And then shortly after that, for some reason, my older brother, who barely listened to any rock and roll, bought a cassette copy of Mother's Milk.
Holy shit.
And I very quickly took it from him. Like, it was his, and he was like, this album's okay, I guess. And I was like, cool. And I listened to it. I was like, no, this album's fucking amazing. And so that was my introduction to the Chili Peppers. And I've been a fan ever since, although I'll get to it when we start talking about their albums, because my fandom has changed in a very odd way, where if somebody came to me and said, are you a Chili Peppers fan? I'd be like, yeah. And they would say, well, what did you think about their last album? I'd be like, you got a minute?
Yeah.
So anyway, so where did your story begin with them?
About halfway into my journey of being a rock and metal fan at this point. So it was like, comparatively speaking to like other bands, I remember when I first got into like the early 90s stuff, like Nirvana, Stone Temple Pilots, Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, all of these kind of like era defining bands. But for some reason, Chili Peppers didn't really click with me until about 2015, when I did probably the naughtiest thing I've ever done as a music fan ever. And I was sat with my friend at college, and he basically said, "Hey, do you want the Chili Peppers' entire discography off of this USB?" And I went, fuck it, why not?
Yeah.
Free. So he transferred it all over, and I was like, you know what? I've grossly neglected this band, so I'm gonna listen to them. And I picked the album cover that I thought appealed to me the most. And I looked at the cover for Uplift Mofo Party Plan, and I thought, this shit looks fucking wild. Surely this has to be reflective of something.
Yeah.
And then I listened to it, and I don't want to give too much away, but like song after song, I was thinking, wow, this is not what I thought the Chili Peppers were capable of.
Okay, especially since casually just living your life, if you're hearing the radio, you're not hearing stuff like Uplift Mofo, you're hearing Snow Hey-O on the radio or whatever, which is not, it doesn't even sound like the same band to me.
Yeah, I kind of like pinned them as this like indie rock thing as a result of the songs that I'd heard on the radio, of course.
Yeah.
With the notable exception of stuff like Give It Away. But I actually, and this is probably as much a fault of, people promoting the band, like say Spotify, for example, they have what they call the studio album collection, but it starts with Blood Sugar Sex Magic. There's four fucking records that predate it, and they just ghost them completely, and that really pisses me off, especially considering, Uplift Mofo and Mother's Milk, at least, Yeah. God damn.
No, I agree.
But, I think the wildest thing is that some of their early stuff could be considered funk metal, like borderline, especially on Mother's Milk in particular. But they've done one of the craziest 180s stylistically, and we'll get into it.
Let's do that. Let's jump right into it. So, like I said, we're going to be doing our bottom 6 picks for today, and as usual, Eddie, just go ahead and jump right into it. What's your number 11 Chili Peppers album?
My number 11 Chili Peppers album is I'm With You.
Okay.
So this one, to me, after Stadium Arcadium, I was thinking, okay, they kind of did a little bit of everything on that album. Where are they gonna go?
And this is the first one with Josh. How do you say his last name? Klinghoffer?
Klinghoffer, I think.
Klinghoffer. Yeah, on guitar.
And I think, John Frusciante was a very involved songwriter, and this is not me, dogging on Josh, but to me that there's just a memorability issue on this album that just does not happen compared to the previous record, because there are songs on Stadium Arcadium you can hear once and they'll be stuck in your head forever, like Danny California, for example. Whereas here, even the singles, I'm just not feeling it. So I'm just gonna go on my track by track of what I was feeling at the time. So you got Monarchy of Roses, is this kind of like glossy disco edged alt rock side of them. Then you get Factory of Faith. I'm not really feeling the vibe here. I'm gonna be brutally meh with a lot of this stuff.
Well, the one thing, since you passed over it, the one thing I think it's important to note about Monarchy of Roses, when I was going through and listening to all of the latter day stuff, that song is the first time that I'm all like, there's guitar feedback. Like all of a sudden you hear distortion, like heavy distortion on the guitars during the verses, and feedback, and it almost feels psychedelic. And then it's cool how it shifts into that sort of disco beat. I love that about them. But that's the one thing is I was like, oh, all of a sudden you can hear like loud guitars again in the music.
Yeah. Yeah, it's. I'd say there was like a period, especially, you know, the three Californication, By the Way, and Stadium Arcadium, where they traded out the overdrive and the distortion completely and went pretty much clean channel.
And you definitely weren't going to hear any feedback. That shit was edited out.
Yeah. Well, they probably didn't even have like enough signal going to the amp to create feedback like at that point.
Probably true.
Yeah. It's oh man. You got Brendan's Death Song, like same goes here. Ethiopia at least has some interesting vocal phrasing, and chorus clean guitar is always going to win Eddie Sparxx over. So this was a little spike in my interest, but you know, Annie Wants a Baby, another one just not holding my attention on this album. Look Around, again, it's just not very memorable. It's a little bit too samey for me. You know, on previous records, you would have had a song that did this, you had a song that did that, and they would have like a really crazy wild one here, and then just a rockin' one here, then a real funky one, and then like a full-on ballad. And it's like, here it's all just kind of, you know, there were moments where I came away from my notes and I didn't realize that 3 songs had passed because I was just, nothing was really grabbing me. Yeah. And it sucks to say that about an album because like that's literally the worst possible thing that could happen. It's like I would rather hear a song and say fuck off,
yeah, exactly,
than be completely indifferent to it. And it's a shame because I like the Chili Peppers, but this album for me, you know, Look Around, again, Adventures of Raindance Maggie has a pretty cool vibe, I'll admit. Did I Let You Know has a chill out vibe to it. Goodbye Hooray is the most rocking cut so far, but it just still doesn't have that edge to it. Happiness Loves Company has an old rock and roll feel. Police Station is a laid back track. Even You Brutus. Sorry to say, it's just not memorable. Meet Me at the Corner, a melancholy track, and Dance, 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 which is unfortunately not a cover of the 1986 Rat song, tops off this underwhelming record. But yeah, for me, even down to the artwork, there's just a real blandness to all of the stuff on this one to me.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's something that's present in varying degrees on a lot of modern Chili Peppers stuff. But there are standouts as we progress later in the list. Yeah. So, yeah, that's my take on I'm With You.
Nice. Well, I'm not with you on that one. It was interesting doing these because I know the first 6, I would say even 7. I would even include Californication. I know those albums very well. Heard them a lot. But when it comes to the next 4, I'd only heard them once, maybe twice, or you know, considering a couple of them. But the one thing that I kept thinking while listening to these albums is that I don't hate any of this, and I still hear that these are super talented dudes.
Yeah.
And the only thing I can equate it to, this century of the Red Hot Chili Peppers reminds me there's only one other band that falls into the same feeling, and that is the Foo Fighters, where the Foo Fighters are a band that if somebody said, do you like the Foo Fighters? I'd be like, yeah, cool. Do you like this album? No. It's like it's a weird thing where it's not bad music. It's just not engaging. Like something is missing from it, even though it sounds like it's done perfectly well and some of the songwriting is great, but there's some urgency that just, it feels kind of forced. Like it's like the latter day Chili Peppers is almost like a watered down version of what they did before, where they've literally just all of the edges have been smoothed out, and any inconsistencies have been drained away, and now it's just this, I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
It's very
it's like someone attacked them with a pumice stone.
Now there's nothing about it that is edgy at all. And at the end of the day, the one that hit me the most kind of meh was their most recent album, The Getaway.
Yeah.
The positive I have for The Getaway is that I can actually hear that they had different ideas in mind. Like, I definitely hear a difference between this album and I'm With You and Stadium Arcadium. Like, it does feel like a different album. So I'm going to give them that because, like I've always said, I would rather a band put out a different sounding bad album than an album that sounds exactly the same as what they did before.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to give them that. But it's still a very watered down Chili Peppers. But I don't think, that's the thing. I don't think these guys have ever phoned it in. Like, that's the thing. Even though I don't like what they're doing and there's something missing from it, I feel like they're being honest with the music that they're making. Yeah. And I can't fault them for that. It doesn't seem like they're trying to make a bunch of radio-friendly music because really, if you listen to it, in many ways, a lot of their stuff is not straightforward music. Even if it is a softer version of what they did before, it's very rare that there's just a regular old pop tune that's got verse, chorus, and everything is very middle of the road. So at this point, this album makes me interested to hear what they do next because on The Getaway, it feels like they have shed every last bit of rock. Like, rock is now gone. They are an alternative pop band. And that's fine. But now, John Frusciante is now back in the band. And I'm like, from what I've heard, that dude, it keeps close company with a lot of like metal musicians and rock musicians. And he's a dude that could do heavier shit if he wanted to. And so I'm curious to see what they end up doing. But on The Getaway, it's just, for lack of a better term, it's uninteresting all the way through. Like, I didn't even write down any song titles that stood out because it was never necessarily a song that stood out. It was always just a part of a song. A bass line was cool. A transition was cool. Maybe what Anthony did on the vocals at one part was cool. But to me, there was never a song where I went, this is the song on this album. It's just kind of, it's fine. This music is fine. And fine is not good enough for me, especially when you've done shit that I think is fucking kick ass.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is that I don't expect the Chili Peppers to come back and be a big old rock band. They could, because we'll get to it later, but if you look at an album like Freaky Styley, is there one rock song on that whole album? Maybe. You've got Catholic Schoolgirls Rule. I think that's it.
Battleship as well, but
it's more like funk, right? It's fast
the other
funk.
One.
Isn't Battleship like a fat? No, you're right. But it's like most of it is not rock at all, and that's great. Yeah. So it has nothing to do with necessarily me wanting them to have heavy guitars. I just want there to feel like there's some uncertainty about what they're going to do next. Like, oh man, I want there to be a surprise. Like, I wasn't expecting this at all. And that's what their early shit had. All the way through One Hot Minute had songs where I went, I was not expecting that at all. And so this one, it doesn't have any of that. And so that's why it's my number 11, The Getaway. This album can get away from me.
Well, that's a good transition because we're not going to get away from this subject for a little bit.
Damn.
Because we are on it with the fucking segues today. So for me, like this album has like a similar vibe to the previous record, but with a much poppier production to it. Mm-hmm. And it's
produced by Danger Mouse.
Yes.
Who some people will know as one half of Gnarls Barkley, which I actually really liked Gnarls Barkley. but that's not rock music. But still.
It shows because, like you said, they are an alt pop band at this point.
Yeah.
There are songs on here that aren't even on the rock spectrum. You got the song Dark Necessities. That piano line is really cool. It reminds me of Right Now by Van Halen. But even the bass riff is a variation on the same thing that Can't Stop does. I remember hearing it and thinking, that's the same fucking riff, We Turn Red has some funky bits in it. The Longest Wave is a Lighters in the Air kind of ballad. You got Goodbye Angels. Seriously kicks off at the end with like this Tom Morello-esque guitar solo, but the rest of the song is largely forgettable. Like I said with the previous album, a lot of the stuff that plagues these modern Chili's albums for me is just a sameness and a sanitized, bland feel to some of the stuff compared to, and it's like you say, we're stacking it against incredibly groundbreaking, nutty shit.
Yeah.
And now they just kind of gradually narrowed their scope and became like this alt pop rock kind of thing, and to compare it feels a bit off. Like you say, it's the Foo Fighters syndrome. It's hard to hate them, but is it exciting at the same time because you kind of know what you're in for?
Yeah,
at this point.
I have like the most dickish thing I can say is that if anyone ever comes to me and says, the Foo Fighters are my favorite band, I'd be like, oh, you don't listen to very much music. But I wouldn't say that to them because I'm not a dick. But in my head, I'm all like, I appreciate that that's your favorite band, but you got to dig a little deeper.
Yeah. What we got here? Sick Love. You got some smooth, spacey funkiness on this track. That one's probably my favorite track so far. Then you get Go Robot, which is a perfect example of how they've totally shed the rock thing. And it's got that spacey disco feel, but with some awesome arpeggiated synths layered in there at the end. But it doesn't help the whole song stay memorable. One killer part does not one great song make.
Agree.
Feasting on the Flowers is kind of chill with a hip hop edge. Detroit is this slow grooving rocker. It has a pretty cool riff in it. This Ticonderoga, am I saying that right? Ticonderoga?
Let me take a look at it. So that I would say that is Ticonderoga. Ticonderoga.
It's kind of chaotic rocker. Encore has a poppy feel. Now, there's something I've had like kind of an idea for making a video on about something that kind of bugs me, but I'm gonna say this here because I feel like it covers a part of it, but it doesn't totally give away all I'm talking about.
Okay.
The Hunter feels like the music in one of the more chilled out car commercials you see on TV. Have you noticed there's like a certain type of song they'll either pick for a car commercial, and it's either this kind of like laid back driving through the hills at night, and it's like the all new Citroen C5, like something like that. Or but like there's another thing. I'll explain it in the video when I eventually make it, but over here I don't know how rife it is over there, but I would imagine car commercials are pretty universal. It's kind of like you'll have like a like
it's either that or it's something
whoa kind of thing.
I think I've seen the commercial you're talking about.
There's so many of them.
It's either that or they use something like that Jet song, and like it's like this is a car for rockers.
Yeah, it's got this like kind of like Imagine Dragons interpretation of what a guitar riff is meant to sound like, and you'll get all of these car commercials thinking, how do we appeal to a mass audience? And it's like, well, that one guitar lick seems to be selling for fucking Ford, so a bunch of other ones do the same thing.
And these days there are like a good, I mean, for popular bands, it seems like there's at least a dozen popular bands that fall under the quote unquote rock category that all do those same bluesy riffs. It's like the Black Keys and things, everything related. They all do the same riffs, and people just eat that shit up. And I'm just like, all right, that's fine. Whatever makes you happy.
And then finally we get Dreams of Samurai, which is a big sprawling track to close this record out. But again, I walked away from both of these bottom albums thinking I don't remember anything. And I think that's pretty, damning when you've got a band that was just churning out hits at a point. And, I suppose to the diehards, there's some memorable tracks here, but for me them doing this style just doesn't appeal to me.
Yeah.
It's just my opinion.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. So for my number 10, this is one that I feel like a lot of people love this album, and I'm going to have to be a little harsh with it. My number 10 is Stadium Arcadium, which I think they were even nominated for a Grammy for this album, I think. Or did it win? Fuck, I don't even know.
I think it won a Grammy for Best Box Set or something.
Oh, okay. But it's an album that, so this was it, what year was this? This was 2006. And so this came after what was the album before this? Was it By the Way? By the Way. So some people like to say that it's kind of a return to form because there is more rockin' stuff on it, but it's a double album. And how many double albums can you think of where all the songs are killer? Like how many
It feels like a fucking triple album because there's like...
That's true. But
it's over 2 hours long.
Yeah, so it's like insane. Not only is it a double album, it's two really long albums. And sure, you could say it's a return to form, but it's only returning to Californication. It's not returning any further back than that. So sure, that's fine. And some of that made it fun to listen to. There's some cool, energetic songs on this, but there is a lot of uninteresting songs. And even the more rockin' songs, like we've said, they just feel kind of lifeless in their rocking. Like it's hard to put your finger on what it is, but it really does feel a little bit is lackadaisical, maybe is the word I'm looking for. And in many ways, when this album first came out, because I'm a fan, so I always listen to their new albums. And this was the first one where I was like, I feel like they're just treading water at this point. They're very good at making the music that they make, but they did 6 albums in a row, in my opinion, where they kind of did whatever the fuck they wanted. You could some of the albums you could compare. There are similarities here and there. They do have the Chili Peppers core sound, but you were never 100% sure of what you were going to get. And then once they crossed into Californication, it's like everything got funneled down, and now there's only this one little area of their style that they're playing with. They may go to the edges of that area, but the area is still very small now. And so having 2 discs worth of this, it almost feels like this is the album equivalent of, some people use that phrase, throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. So the Chili Peppers did that, and then all the stuff that didn't stick, they also put that on the album. So they're just like, fucking everything goes. And just because you write 28 songs doesn't mean that 28 songs need to come out. I'm just saying. So while there are really enjoyable parts on this album, I'll give them that. Danny California is a great song, but I think I said this to you before. Snow Hey-O is one of the worst Chili Peppers songs. I don't even understand how anybody... I understand how a 50-year-old housewife likes that song. That's fine. But it's it's so, every time I hear it, I go, why did they ever why did they think this was okay? But you know what? It was a hit for them. So who the fuck am I? What the fuck do I know? I'm just this, guy on a little podcast that likes to point out that things are boring sometimes. But so once again, like I feel like whenever I get on a tangent where I'm talking shit, I always have to come back and say that they're still really good at what they're a great band. So it's just like they put out a collection of leftovers here. And I don't even know if paring the album down to 12 tracks would have even helped, but it may have. But I really do think that I still have to give them credit, because even though, and we've been saying a lot how like the latter day Chili Peppers almost feels like a different band. In a way, that's true, but I have to give them some kind of credit, because you hear it and you still know it's Chili Peppers somehow. So I have to give them credit for not only having their own thing, but to the point where, like, can you think of another band that sounds like the Chili Peppers? Either era of the Chili Peppers. Can you think of other bands that have that combination of things that they do? I can't think of one right offhand.
Yeah, I can't think of any bands that did it and nailed the style. I know that there were a lot of imitators, but none of them really ever. They kind of picked one aspect of their sound and went with that.
Yeah.
And mashed that with other influences. But aside from that, you look at any funk metal band, none of them sound like the Peppers. They just have the funk element of what they were doing.
And some of them do sound like each other. But the Chili Peppers have always maintained this sound where you just know that it's them. And I think that is something that needs to be celebrated for the Chili Peppers. And that's a big reason why I'll always say that I'm a fan. Because I'm like, shit, the Chili Peppers sound like the Chili Peppers. And all of those guys, I'll even throw, Anthony Kiedis, he gets a lot of criticism for his vocals. But to be completely honest, nobody sounds like Anthony Kiedis.
Yeah,
and
he's unique.
In this day and age, and I'm not just talking rock and roll, I'm talking about music in general, the idea of having a unique voice, that's gone out the fucking window. Nobody cares. Yeah. Nobody cares to be unique. Everyone just wants to especially in like heavy rock bands now, whether the guy is grunting or screaming or singing, it all sounds like the same singers.
They all watched the same tutorials on YouTube and all came out with the same presets.
Yeah. And so that's one thing is that even down to just the vocals of the Chili Peppers, you do not mistake Anthony Kiedis' voice, even when he's doing some more melodic singing, or if he's doing his weird scatting or whatever he's doing. What's that one? It's the end of what's that song? Soul to Squeeze, where he's like bing a dong a ding a dong gong gong, and I'm just like, what? What? And I love that song, but I still get to that part and I'm all like, that's fucking stupid.
One of my favorite like meme videos. It was like, hey, have you checked out the new Red Hot Chili Peppers song? No, just stick it on. Yeah, let's listen to it. And it's like this really pretty funky guitar part. And he's like, hey, this is pretty good. And then the lyrics come in and it's like, doopy doop poo poo, gonna have to warn ya, California, California.
It's easy to poke fun at Anthony, but I think that I like that he has his own thing going. And he's not a traditional singer. He's not a good singer, but he figured out how to become a better version of what he does. I mean, depending on what you're talking about. Like, he sings better now. When you used to hear him sing like on Mother's Milk and Blood Sugar Sex Magic, there's part of it you're like, ooh, that's borderline right there, buddy. But yeah, anyway, back to Stadium Arcadium. The point I'm trying to make is that I don't like this album, and really the bottom maybe 4 albums that we're talking about here for me, maybe even 5. They're ones that I will rarely ever go listen to, and I have no desire. If I want to hear Chili Peppers, those are not the albums I go to, but I have to give them fucking credit because they're still, in my opinion, a great band. But Stadium Arcadium, I think, is just too much of not enough, and so that's why it's my number 10.
You mentioned cutting it down to about 12 tracks. I took the liberty of actually making a playlist for this episode.
Oh yeah.
It's called Stadium Arcadium Cut Down, and it is a 10-track album. And I'm gonna see if you can remember like the corresponding titles for some of these songs, but
maybe.
Here is my track listing for it, and I want to know how surprising it really is. Danny California opens it.
Okay.
Then Humpty Bump.
Okay.
Then Come On Girl.
Oh, okay.
Then Wet Sand.
All right.
Tell Me Baby.
Okay. Yeah. I know that one.
Ready Made.
Well, all right. Yeah, I like that one too.
Desecration Smile. Storm in a Teacup. If and Turn It Again. And that there is the 10 tracks that stood out to me personally.
There's a couple there that I don't totally remember, but overall, like I feel like I get what you're going for there.
Yeah, it's the strongest material to my ears, but I'm coming at the Chili Peppers from a metal background, so I'm always going to like the heavier shit.
Yeah.
But that's not to say I don't like the straight up funk stuff from their early records too. So
that's an interesting playlist. It could be. I mean, it's one of those things where I feel like if you're a Chili Peppers fan, more is always better. But it's just it's hypothetical. But yeah, maybe Stadium Arcadium could have been better. But maybe part of its appeal is the fact that it was this big old chunk of tons of songs. You know.
Yeah. So yeah, that's your take on Stadium Arcadium?
That is. So we can move on to your number 9.
Cool. So my number 9, and this is probably the placement that's going to get me the most hate mail. I've gone for By the Way.
Why would that get you? Okay. I guess I'm not one of them. So I'm like, that makes sense. So by the way,
I looked into it, and I can see where you're coming from, that like you're not surprised to see it here.
Yeah.
But I did some research, and I was fascinated to find that this is usually in the top 3 of like every list I've seen. And, you know, my friend Dan, he can attest to this, because this, I think, is his favorite Chili's album.
Okay.
But
he's your age though, right?
He's my age.
So that's the thing I was trying to say about coming into a band later when they're still popular. So this stuff is on the radio and on, you know, whatever channel you actually see videos on. But so I could understand that coming into a band like that at that time, and this album being one that's important for some people. So yeah, I get that.
I think it's interesting as well, though, to note on the flip side is the fact that I'm the same age as him, but I prefer the like opposite end of the spectrum completely.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how, you know, subjective music is. But I'm just gonna jump into why By the Way is my number 9 pick.
All right.
I will say it sits above the previous 2 because it at least has a bold statement to it. So my thing with By the Way is that I can appreciate it for the balls it would take to come from something like Get Up and Jump all the way to this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, that is the kind of career path that we like to see from a band. Is that
depending on who you're talking to, that could be considered an evolution. You know, it's just not. It's not to me, but I can get that viewpoint.
Yeah, but unfortunately for the album, this is not the kind of stuff I come to the Chili Peppers for.
Yeah,
I don't come to this to get like introspective. I come to this so I can listen to Anthony Kiedis advertise his dick for an hour. You know. But yeah, I'm gonna step on down to the track by track. So, By the Way, the title track opening the album, I always had a bit of an aversion to this song, but it is undeniably catchy, but it just always never did it for me. There was something like off about it I just never connected to for me.
Yeah.
Universally speaking, it has nice chill vibes and the string section is nice. To this album's credit, it's a good, relaxing listen. Mainly down to the fact that it's kind of like one of those bore you to sleep tapes.
Yeah.
Or like one of those videos where someone's not talking about particularly anything. And in a way, I can see its properties being nice, but yeah, it's not the sort of thing, like I said, I come to them for. This Is the Place didn't really take off for me. Dosed. At this point, the album is too mellow, 3 tracks in a row. After the chaotic opener set up quite a bit of a thrill ride comparatively. But the chorus is nice. Don't Forget Me. At this point, the songs are really becoming interchangeable for me. The Zephyr song, real samey now.
That's also in my list of the worst Chili Peppers songs, because how lazy is the chorus of that song? That's like first round lyric writing and melody writing. That'll do. It sounds right. It's just so. It sounds like it could have been in 50 other songs.
Yeah. Oh man. Like it, and then you get Can't Stop. Now, Can't Stop is a song I would be quite happy never hearing again, because it's kind of the default setting for any college band. Sure, it works, but it feels so generic at this point, because there was, I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast yet, but when I was in college, there was a sheet on the wall in all of the rehearsal rooms of a list of banned songs that you weren't allowed to play. There was Iron Man, Paranoid, Enter Sandman, like all of your standard radio rock overplays.
Yeah.
But at the very top of the list, it said anything by the Red Hot Chili Peppers after Californication, which includes Don't Stop.
To be honest,
Can't Stop.
The Can't Stop is a song that it makes me aggravated, because the way the song starts off, and I'm not just talking about the first like 20 seconds where it's very chaotic and then it goes into that, or it's like however it builds up and then goes into that like
yeah.
I love all of that. I think the verses are cool, and then it gets to the chorus and it literally loses so much steam that
it dies.
It's almost like you're literally like getting to the top of the mountain, and then all of a sudden you realize that you're actually just at the middle of a gigantic other mountain, and you're like, oh, well, we're never going to get up there because now we're just here in the middle. So it's a letdown, but I do love the vibe of the first, like the verses in the song.
If it had done Danny California and elevated in the chorus, this song would be so much cooler. But to me, I mean, who am I to say? Because the song is massively successful.
Absolutely. It is one that you still hear a lot today.
But to my ears, it just doesn't go anywhere. And I don't get the appeal of why this one is so successful comparatively to some other tracks in their discography. Mm-hmm. But I suppose at this point, they were appealing to more of a pop audience than a rock audience.
Well, I also think
transitioning.
Yeah, I also feel like this is a time to talk about, like, some people have these opinions that they sold out and they're trying to make music for a particular type of person, and I hate it when anybody says that about any band, because 99% of the time it's not true. They're not actually just trying to pander to an audience. They've just decided to do something different, and if their goal is, well, now we're going to do this music that is more universal to people, it's not just rock music. I get where they're going with a lot of this stuff, but I would never call. I mean, I'm sure there are bands where I could full on say that feels like they sold out right there, but most of the time I feel like it is not the case, and that's just being very short-sighted in the way that you view music.
I think. A better way to word this would be, I don't think it's necessarily the band's fault that the media decided to latch on to this later half of their career.
Yeah.
Because if you go on, say, Spotify, and I would imagine everywhere else, generally speaking, I'm a buy your music guy, but I use Spotify as like a kind of window shopping, and then if I like the album, I'll buy it. But
that's how I use Apple Music. I listen to a lot of music on Apple Music, but if it's something I like, I have it on vinyl, if there's a vinyl.
Yeah, it's like I took it upon myself to really like analyze all of the stuff that was really being pushed and all of the stuff that was kind of getting buried. And I think the thing that annoys me about the Chili Peppers is the way that people write off like the first 6 albums that have a lot of great shit on it.
Like
And
it's like Pantera.
yeah,
I mean, I wouldn't say that for the early Pantera is great, but it's definitely not bad. So
yeah.
but even the band was just like, oh, we don't talk about those.
Yeah, it's one of those things that like but I like it, and it stings to see like
Yeah.
this era so ghosted.
I think that's why you
And
do have, like I said, that it's split down the middle with people that are older. Like not, it's like younger people seem to be kind of okay with what they're doing now, but with older people, I hear a lot of that sort of like, this is not the band that I used to love, and I'm guilty of being that person, and but you can't. I don't know. You can't. They've been successful with what they've been doing. We had this conversation when we were talking about Megadeth. If Risk had been really successful, maybe it would have been a Chili Peppers type of thing, where all of a sudden you get this more alternative version of Megadeth that just continues on. And honestly,
yeah.
I think that would have been a very interesting sort of alternate timeline for them. But at this point, I don't know. At this point, it is what it is. But By the Way is definitely the best example of them. I think it's the furthest away. Maybe this album and the Getaway are the two that I think are the furthest away from what they originally did.
Yeah, yeah, I would have to agree there. Then you've got I Could Die For You. It's kind of back to the chill but samey vibe again. Midnight starts nice with those strings, but it's still just so samey. Like, the thing I liked about other Chili's albums is the variety in songs you would get, whereas here it's just kind of like it's a chill song and then another chill song and then a chill song after that, and you got Throw Away Your Television. Yeah, it's a repeat. Yeah, this is how I feel about this album. That's Cabron is it's at least something different at this point. Tear, I actually began to feel sleepy at this point.
Yeah.
So like I said, if you need something to listen to before bed, I recommend it. But I can't tell if that's the album's intended effect or I was just genuinely bored. It's also important to note that I was playing San Andreas at this point. I was gunning people down with a helicopter and I almost fell asleep. That's a pretty intense sleep inducer. So if you suffer with insomnia or something, try this album.
Yeah.
Yeah. But on Mercury, it like brought up the pace a little bit. Minor Thing had a cool guitar solo, but still felt bland compared to other albums. Warm Tape has a nice vibe. I liked that. It was different. It had that dreamy kind of vibe. And then Venice Queen is kind of another vibey closer. This album is, for want for a better word, if you've come to this album expecting a party, you're gonna get a snooze fest.
Yeah.
Because aside from the album's two like lead singles, the rest of the album is like a sleep ambient tape to me.
It's interesting to note that what I read about this time period with the band is that Flea was not super happy with the direction they were going, and the fact that I think John Frusciante kind of took over. This is a lot of his influence. And to the point where Flea was thinking of quitting the band, and I think they talked about it at some point, but I don't really know the I think this may have actually been in the wiki when I was reading about it, but the thing that I thought was very telling about not just the Chili Peppers but the relationship that Anthony and Flea have is in some interview when they were asking Flea, well, why did ultimately you choose to not leave the band? And he said, because I just didn't want to have to tell Anthony. And I'm like,
wow,
well, that's very sweet. And like that shows that says a lot about their friendship and their what they've built together, because they are legitimately the two original Chili Peppers.
it's a very touching story, that the story of the Chili Peppers, because a lot of it is just based on friendship.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
Like it's just a bunch of bros. Really, it's just their whole fucking career is just like a cold one with the boys.
Yeah, and honestly, like I've said this to you before, a big thing with the appeal of the Red Hot Chili Peppers is that if you see interviews, especially with Anthony and Flea, they seem like awesome dudes. Like I'm just like, yeah, I want to hang out with them. Like it's like, and that also leads me to that thing I've always wondered. Like, let's say that there's a I mean, we could say it's a prediction. Let's say what happens if this podcast blows the fuck up to where it's, millions of listeners, and all of a sudden we are granted access to all sorts of, rock stars, and we become friends. Let's say we become friends with Anthony and Flea to where they're inviting us over to watch football or whatever the fuck,
Hell yeah.
Would we view these albums differently then?
Strong possibility.
Yeah,
I suppose
that's why I always look at people that are friends with people. I'm like, yeah, you're hearing that you're not hearing that as a fan. You're hearing it as a friend. So I totally understand that. So that's an interesting thought.
I suppose as well, if you're connected to someone, if you're really connected with someone on a personal level, you'll kind of understand their vibe even more than what they say or do in the media. So if you were in that scenario and you heard something on an album with a little bit more personal context, you'd be like, oh man, dude, I didn't know you felt that way.
Yeah.
Hey, let's hang out. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a feeling that, like, especially like albums like this, I feel like I would feel way differently about it if I was one of their buddies.
Yeah.
Did you get to the end of this one yet?
Yeah, I did. But you mentioned about Flea feeling frustrated at the time.
Yeah.
With I can understand that, because I know he made a conscious effort to kind of slow down his bass playing periodically over the albums. Like he got to Mother's Milk, and I can't remember what the thing is. I think someone said something to him, and it made him think, oh, maybe I can get a little bit more melodic with my bass. And he gradually did, but he never left the funk behind. By the time you get to By the Way, though, very little of it is funky.
Yeah.
So I can imagine him feeling a little bit alienated by it.
Sure.
So, that I can kind of put myself in the shoes, because if I was in a band and I played thrash metal, for 6 albums straight, and they said, hey, we decided to sell one of your kick drums. You're only allowed to use one foot now. I'd be like, ah. But I like my double kick.
But also, though, that since you're bringing up that point, I feel like that's a welcome sort of just left turn for a little bit. Like that's why most of my favorite bands have a variety of albums, because if you go, we always talk about Metallica, but the reason why I think Metallica shows are so great is they do have fast, thrashy songs and more groovy songs, and it's a good variety of stuff to play live. So an album like By the Way from the Chili Peppers, if they actually played older shit live, which they don't, I saw a recent concert and they played, I think, 2 songs from the 90s, and so I'm like, shit, okay. But if they did that, then the songs from By the Way might seem like kind of cool, because you would get, if they did, a more upbeat, really funky, heavy kind of thing, and then followed it up with something from this. As a live performer, I would say, oh, that'd be cool. You get some dynamics in the show.
Yeah.
But on the album, by the way, this album is my number 9. Get it. By the way.
Yeah.
By the way, this album is my number 9 also. So I'm just going to jump into it real quick, because I was already talking, but I don't have a lot to add, because I agree with most of what you already said here. I really do think on its own, it's way too samey in the mellowness of it all.
Yeah.
Now, some people could say that they matured on this album, which I wouldn't fault them for that, actually. But I honestly, to be honest, I can't fault a band for wanting to branch out and do something different. And this is an album I have to say is different because it's the softer side of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. But I have to admit that this feels, especially once you get deep into the album, it reminds me of like if somebody had snuck up behind all of the Chili Peppers and injected them with mood stabilizing drugs. Where all of a sudden they were all just like, oh, all right, we're doing an album now, guys. Cool. Would you like to play some bass, Flea? I would like to play some bass. What about you, Chad, on the drums? I'm going to play some drums now. Here are our songs. All right. Like I feel like that's this album. They're on some heavy mood stabilizers.
They've all been tranquilized.
Yeah.
With just little enough to keep them awake enough to play their instruments.
Exactly.
But
at the same time, like I keep doing on these albums, I got to give them some fucking credit because there are some great melodies and beautiful songwriting on here, and that's nice and all. So I'm going to give them credit for that because it's fucking still way better than most things that alternative rock kind of bands are putting out. But like we've said many times, this is just not what I come to Chili Peppers for, and even though I did enjoy it in the story of their discography, when I had to compare it to other things, I just went, there's not enough on this that makes it a higher up album for me. And it's way too long. So many of their albums, more of their recent albums, are just too goddamn long. And I'm telling you right now, like whenever somebody releases a new album and I go over to Apple Music and I see that there's 16 tracks, I literally go, I'm going to do this later. And it keeps me from listening to the album right away, which hurts their streams, which I know for the most part doesn't mean shit. But I can't be the only person that goes and says, oh, I don't even want to start with this fucking 16 song album. You know, it's like, so it's too much. And really, I think the one thing I have to say, if I remember right, so Rick Rubin produced all of their albums from Blood Sugar Sex Magic all the way to Stadium Arcadium, I think. They're all Rick Rubin produced. So at least with this particular album, I have less of a problem with the production because we're going to get to some albums, one in particular, where like there was a style that Rick Rubin was doing in the late 90s and early 2000s where I'm just like, was he even listening to what the fuck was going on? And so anyway, but it's not just then. Like he's Rick Rubin is interesting because he's somebody that I admire, and some of his production is so fucking good, and then some of it is really bad. So I'm just like, I wonder what happens. It's so weird. Anyway, I don't have any more to add about By the Way except for that. Like it's just it's not a very interesting album, but I give them credit for doing something a little bit different and incorporating some melody and some mellowness to their stuff. It's just not anything that connected with me in any way. So it is here at my number 9.
Yeah, I would say the thing with By the Way, as my last little closing thing, it's kind of like when bands will play a whole set at one tempo and one level of loud.
Hey, Matt, that's what metal fans want.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
The cultured ones, like us, on the other hand, things sound heavier when they're stacked next to lighter parts. So you got to have like kind of a build-up. But like, I suppose like By the Way is an inverted version of that, whereas too much of it is mellow, and therefore the mellow parts would feel more emotional, and I would feel more connected to them if I was given a little bit more context between tracks.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a little too chill for us metal dudes.
Totally. All right, so sorry. We're professionals, folks. On to your number 8.
Cool. So my number 8 is Californication.
All right. Cool.
So this is the album that marked a distinctive shift towards a more pop-oriented approach to their music. And its success proves that it worked for them.
Yep.
But it doesn't alter the fact that this era of Chili Peppers onward isn't exactly my cup of tea. But there are some real standout tracks on this album that I really do like. I've also kind of joked to my friends in the past that this is where they became the mild green bell peppers. So I'm just gonna dive on in. Around the World, it's hard to deny that this is a tune, to be fair.
Yeah, that's a fun song.
It's a great opener. Flea's bass is the real highlight here. You know, I know people always think of the but I love the kind of thing going on underneath.
I love that shit.
Man, it's really tasteful, this song. And not to mention ding dang gong ding ding dang gong gong ding dang. But yeah,
I love that so much because it's just like that is that's one of the things that I think that's still a leftover of the unpredictable Red Hot Chili Peppers because it's really dumb, but at the same time I'm like I'm glad that he did it because it's almost like taking the piss out of everything. Like I don't need to fucking write anything here. Here's what I'm gonna do. Ding dang dong dong ding dang.
It's funny as well. Like this is also. I know last time we talked about how the Black Album kind of had one foot in the thrash era and one foot in the load era.
Yeah.
And it was this like crossover. To me, this stuff feels like it's got one foot in their 90s stuff and one foot in where they were going.
Yeah, definitely a transitional album.
Yeah. Parallel Universe, they've gone full alt rock at this point on this song. There's not really any funk present on this song. Scar Tissue is a nice chill song. So it's kind of a precursor of what you could come to expect on the follow-up, albeit, you know, in a much higher quantity. Other Side this is another hit from the record, and it's really catchy, but there's a gaping void in my immature funk metalhead brain screaming, "Where's the fucking riff with the slap bass? Give me the fucking..." You know... There's just that little battle jacketed thrasher in the back of my mind that's like, where's the distortion at?
Yeah,
come on.
The Other Side is a song that that was around the time that I actually still occasionally listened to rock radio, like in my car. And I had to turn it off when that would come on because it got so tiresome. Because that song is so heavy with the slit my throat and so. I'm just like, oh my God. And I appreciate the emotion involved in the song. But when you hear some songs, you start to hear them a lot and it just becomes so tiresome. Yeah. That this is a song that even today I'm like, I do not want to hear Other Side again.
Dude, like in the UK, I have a real moral dilemma with certain Queen songs because they have been so played in so many adverts in this country. Yeah. So many goddamn commercial. I know, but they're from the UK. Yeah. So like we use them probably. Yeah, like we use them like 10 times, I would imagine. But there are some songs that I hear and I'm like, Freddie, I love you, my guy, but I gotta turn you off this time. But there are certain Queen songs that don't bother me, and some that do.
Man, I can't. That's gonna be a fun one when we get to Queen. Shit, man. Yeah. That's gonna be cool.
Yeah.
We'll get there, folks.
It's just that kind of the overplay quality can really kill a song.
Yeah, I would with some songs I could totally see that. That's why like when somebody says something is overplayed, I'm always just kind of like, well, I think you mean overheard, like you've heard it too much. Yeah. But I mean, because there are some songs that I know get played every single day, at least 10 times a day on rock radio. But guess what? I don't listen to rock radio, so I don't fucking know. So it's you know. But yeah, at this point I did, so it was my fault, first off. But it was a hit song. People wanted to hear it. It's like, you know, you can't, especially with Queen, people still want to hear We Are the Champions all the time. And I don't fault them for it. It's a beautiful song.
True that. We got here, Get On Top. This is more like it for me. That funky, funk rock kind of thing.
Yeah.
Californication, nice title track. Really love this song.
Yeah, that's one where it's mellow, but the songwriting on it, I'm like, that is a really well written song.
Yeah.
It's not one that I want to listen to often, but when I do, I'm always like, oh, I love the melodic turns that the song takes. Like that's as much as I this is not one of my favorite albums. That's a song where I'm like, kudos to those motherfuckers. So that's a great song.
There's a remixed, like kind of vapor waved doomer version on YouTube where someone has like slowed it down a little bit and put vinyl crackle over it.
Oh, wow.
And it completely changes like the mood.
Wow.
Like it goes from like slightly melancholy but just emotional and feely to like gun to my head, I'm in my like end of days shit. Like my God. Like that, just slowing down the riff like to oh
wow.
And it hit me even harder because I was like, wow, I can really actually, now that you've slowed it down even more, I can hear like like an undertone of desperation throughout the whole thing. And I was thinking, oh man, I actually really fucking love this song.
Yeah.
We've got Easily. It's a standard alt rocker. It doesn't really stand out to me, that one. Porcelain is a nice vibey chill out track. You know, I like that about it. And the reason I like it so much is because it's surrounded by a bunch of other stuff, you know? Like, I know I'm still kind of harping on the by the way thing, but it's true. You know, it sticks out more because there's more variety going on.
It's like where on Blood Sugar Sex Magic, where Breaking the Girl fits in that album.
Yeah.
It's awesome because it's a little break and it's something different. And, you know, so we'll get to that one, obviously.
Emmett Remus has an awesome heavy chorus. You know me, I love that.
Yeah.
I like dirt. I like dirt. I like dirt.
That's a fun song.
Yeah, for sure. You know, you got Velvet Glove. It's another like alt rock track. You get Savior. It's kind of ballady one. Purple Stain feels like an alternate version of Around the World to me. Like it's got similar elements to it, but it just felt like a little bit of a copied idea. Right on Time feels like a link to their old stuff and their modern sound. Road Trippin' is a mellow, string-laden closer. And in conclusion, all in all, the songwriting here is clearly strong since the hits of this album are very memorable.
Yeah.
But to me, this era of Chili's onward has a blandness to it compared to their earlier and, for want of a better word, much spicier records.
Yeah.
You know,
It's a good way to put it. I like that.
Yeah, I'd be fine condensing most of this album into a really fucking good, like 5 or 6 track EP, and I'd be happy with that.
Well, I mean, even this album is also too long. They could just cut it down to 10 or 11 tracks, and I think it would be super strong.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm inclined to agree.
Cool.
But yeah, that is Californication at number 8 for me.
Well, to do another great transition, I'm not going to transition into this album because I'm not with you on this one because my number 8 is I'm With You is my number 8. That's where we're right. Number 8? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of the opposite of you when it comes to this album because while I think this album starts off really strong. So this is the 2011 album, the first with Josh Klinghoffer on guitar. And the first 2 tracks to me are 2 of the most interesting and engaging Chili Peppers songs that they've done in a long time. Unfortunately, this album does not continue that vibe to me. And that's the big problem.
Yeah.
But Monarchy of Roses, like I already talked about, I love the juxtaposition between the sort of distorted, almost psychedelic sounding verses, and then it all of a sudden just levels out and becomes very disco and groovy on the choruses. And then Factory of Faith, the reason why I like that one so much is because I like I like it when Anthony does things that I don't expect with his vocals, and he does that actually like that whole part of the song.
Yeah.
Like just the way that I'm just like that feels more. There's more of the old school energy in what they were doing, and maybe some of it had to do with the fresh blood coming into their band. I mean, he was a guy that already played with the band live anyway, but you know, he was new when it came to like songwriting stuff. So I think maybe that helped out. But the album starts off very, very strong, and it feels a little bit more adventurous than all of the albums they had done post Californication. And the first thing that I thought of, because I started with Californication and listened all the way to the most recent just to get the vibe of where they went with these albums. As soon as this album kicked in, I thought to myself, oh, I can hear Flea. Has Flea been in the band for the past 3 albums? Because I don't remember him being there. And I know that he's there, and I know there's cool bass parts, but this is the first one where I'm like, I love that he's so prominent. He's one of my favorite bass players, arguably one of the best bass players ever. Like the dude is a master of his instrument, and I love hearing him. Even if he does the same sort of funky shit you're already kind of ready to hear, I don't care. It's great hearing him do his shit, and on this album, he's front and center. Like it has a very urgent production style that everything feels very in your face, even on the more melodic songs. So, unfortunately, this isn't really a return to form because the album doesn't continue that way. It has, especially as you move on, some pretty yawn-inspiring songs, and especially the second half. Like it's just I think that they front-loaded this album, in my opinion. And the main single off this one, which was The Adventures of Raindance Maggie, is probably my least favorite song on the album. And I remember when this first came out on regular cable television in America at that point, if you didn't have, you know, some digital cable that had MTV2 and stuff like that on it, if you just had basic cable, the only place I remember there ever being music videos was on Sunday morning, and it was the VH1 like top 20 countdown. And VH1 was, even from the beginning, presented as this is the music video channel for old people, for people who think more about their taxes than they do about new albums from bands. And so you started to see, I would watch these just because I'm so interested in music that I was like, oh, well, it keeps me, you know, into like what's going on in music. But like everything at that point was like Kings of Leon and things that were like real bland, but I can see the appeal of these things. They just weren't what I wanted to hear. And Adventures of Raindance Maggie fit right in there with this sort of, you don't have to, you could easily ignore this song or you could listen to it. It's not really engaging in any way. And so at first I was so just like, oh, I'm not going to listen to this album. And then I remember being in a record store and hearing Monarchy of Roses, and I'm like, oh shit, I'm buying this fucker. And so I bought it because I was just like, this is back before I really collected, you know, vinyl. I was still just buying CDs. And so I just remember like listening to it in my car a lot and really kind of digging this album. But as time went on, I started to really go, all right, it really does start off strong and then doesn't really deliver. I think if the vibe and the excitement that I feel in the first couple tracks had continued for the whole album, then this one would be probably way up higher in my list. But as it turns out, it is here at number 8. I'm with you.
Cool. So I suppose I'm not with you on my number 7 pick because my number 7 pick is Stadium Arcadium.
Cool.
So
we're just knocking out all these 2000s albums.
like we said before about it, the important thing to note about this bad boy is it's a double album and it is long. You know, clocking in at just over 2 hours. But with that, in the modern age comes a beauty that you can cherry pick what kind of chili peppers you want to hear on this album. Like I did with my 10-track playlist I mentioned earlier in the episode. But and I suppose that kind of bumped it up for me, is that this album, out of all of what is considered their later works, this one to me had the most on it that I liked.
Mm-hmm.
And while that is a result of the sheer quantity of stuff on this album, it's something I'm not complaining too much about, because I managed to get at least a 43-minute enjoyment out of it,
Sure.
Considering the other 80 minutes are, well, I'm just going to jump on into it. So
do it. Oh, man, this is, whenever I see an album like this, I'm like, oh shit, he's got to do a track by track.
29 whole tracks. Let's do this. Right on. So Danny California is a great song with a great video too. And it hits the middle ground that was missing on the previous record. So it's going to draw, some of the rock fans that they may have lost with By the Way back in with that big ass stadium chorus. Snow Heyo is, I didn't do my brackets thing. Hang on. Snow Heyo is a nice song, but it doesn't jump out too much to me. Charlie is, to me, not very interesting despite its funky feel. Stadium Arcadium, at this point I was disappointed at the time of writing it to see that despite the heavy setup of Danny California, we're still hanging out in bland alt land. Hump de Bump is pretty much a redone version of American Ghost Dance. Still, yeah, I think that's what makes it the most exciting song since the opener. But She's Only 18 comes on, and I'm bored again. And how are you going to make a song called She's Only 18 like a boring track? That would strike me as kind of a hair metal kind of nod.
Hey, you know what? At least, seeing our recent foray into the Kiss world, I'm just glad that they made her legal.
That's true. Yeah. Although the Catholic schoolgirls might have something to say about that.
That's true. That is very true. We'll get to them.
Oh, shit. Slow Cheetah, it wasn't really holding my attention. It's not a great sign considering the length of this fucking thing. Torture Me, frantic, melodic, but meh. Strip My Mind has something of a good chill feel with some Queen influence in there. Especially in Michigan, at least has an uplifting chorus. Warlocks is really melodic. Come On Girl has a cool chorus. Wet Sand. Now, I actually really like Wet Sand.
I took a second to go glance over at the track list again, and I was like, oh, he's got so far to go.
Yeah.
I'm going to put out a call. I know that we don't have that many listeners, but maybe one day a lot of people will listen to this episode. And if I could please ask a favor of every artist in the world from now on, just don't do double albums anymore. If you feel like you have 2 albums worth of strong material, put one half of it out and see how it goes. Because honestly, if I'm a really big fan of an album that comes out that's got 10 to 12 tracks on it, and then a year later they go, oh, here's the other songs from that recording session. You into it? I'd be like, oh yeah, sure, I'll listen to that. But for some reason, putting it out all together, it is way too much. And I realize that maybe I'm showing my age, because I think for younger people, they don't give 2 shits. They're like, it's just going to go it's going to be on random anyway. So who the fuck cares? But I'm like, no, I'm an album person. And it's just, even the best band in the world, it takes a lot out of me if you have albums that are this long and they're double albums. I'm like, just half the shit up, okay? You know, it's like,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know. Like it even took a while for Use Your Illusion to grow on me. Now I love both of those albums, but even at the time, I'm like, whoo, it's a lot to unwrap here.
Yeah. God,
I guess technically that wasn't a double album. They did release them separately, but still, I refer to it as a double album.
Yeah, I refer to it as a double album. They were released on the same day.
Yeah.
That makes it a double album for me.
Yeah.
It was just released as kind of a puzzle. You need the other piece. But
sorry,
yeah,
go ahead. Continue.
That's okay. We're going to be here for a while, so we can stop for breaks if we like. Warlocks is really melodic. Come On Girl has a cool chorus. I've said some of these. Hang on.
You were at Wet Sand. I'm sorry. I interrupted you right after Wet Sand.
I just really like Wet Sand. I feel like it was a really well written song. Hey, some tasteful lead.
Sorry.
That's okay. I should have seen it coming. It's got some tasteful lead playing from Frusciante. Desecration Smile has a lead guitar line that reminds me of Garden by Pearl Jam. I don't know if you picked up on that.
I didn't, but I can see that.
It's pretty much exactly the same as the vocal melody from that. It's cool. I like it though. I like that melody. Tell Me Baby, it's funky, catchy melodic track. Hard to Concentrate is what
that's how I feel
finding it
on this album.
That's how, yeah. 21st century, Red Hot Chili Peppers doing their modern alt rock thing. She Looks to Me, one of their slow tracks. Ready Made, now favorite song here. You know, I wonder why. You know, this could be a Rage Against the Machine song in parts, like. And that's what really bumped this song up for me.
It does feel like the second half of this album does have a lot more energetic tracks on it. So at least it's got that going for it.
I agree. You get If. It feels like it belongs in one of those motivational videos. Like there's like emotive background things to a bunch of mountains, and it's like, don't ever feel like you gotta wake up and you gotta just go out and kaboom it. Just go, fuck yeah. But that's my motivational speech of the day.
Do it.
Make your dreams come true. Have you seen the whole cut of that? No. All the other batshit insane shit he says? Like the whole thing, it goes for another 10 minutes if I remember. It's just him doing a bunch of monologues in front of a green screen.
Shit. That is a unique character, that guy.
Fuck yeah. Make You Feel Better. I'm not crazy about this one. It's a little too indie rock for the stuff I come to this band for. Animal Bar. Spaced out alt rocker, So Much full on alt rock. Storm in a Teacup. Now this is more like it. You know, you got some funk rock. This in parts could have been on Blood Sugar Sex Magic. We Believe. Another one that didn't really hold my attention, to be honest. Turn It Again. Now the climax of this song with that ripping guitar solo from Frusciante pays off damn good at the end. And should have finished the album, in my opinion. Tacking on Death of a Martian on the end, I mean, it's okay. But I would have preferred those two tracks to swap places. Because I feel like Turn It Again is the best possible way that could have ended. The good news is, like I said, we finally come to the end of this, fucking 30 track, or at least 29 track album. You can kind of do a little bit of the legwork yourself and condense it down to however many of whichever vibe you fancy. I'd say, like I said, there's a 10-track album in here that's a vast improvement on the previous record. But there's just so much of it that can overshadow it in your case. But yeah, that's my take on Stadium Arcadium.
Cool. I think that with this one, we will effectively have killed off the latter portion of the Chili Peppers catalog, I think, because my number 7 is Californication from 1999. This is a good album with some weak issues. This is the one where after Frusciante left for a little bit, and they had Derek Zoolander on guitar. What's his name?
Dave Navarro.
Dave Navarro. I heard somebody once refer to him as the Derek Zoolander of rock and roll, and I'm all like, that is the most accurate thing I've ever fucking heard. But so Frusciante's back here. So
really, really good looking.
Shit. Or maybe you thought I didn't know what a lagoogly was.
I need to watch that fucking movie again. They were killed in a tragic gasoline fight accident.
Yeah. And I use the word brother not as an actual brother, but in the way black people use it, which is more meaningful, I think. That's a great one.
Oh, man.
Anyway, it's a great movie. Go check out Zoolander. But Californication. So my number one gripe with this album, and it's even more telling when you go back and listen to other albums and then flip back quickly to Californication, the production on this album is fucking awful. It sounds awful. It is brick-walled all to shit where there's clipping. Even in softer songs, the fucking shit is clipping. It all feels like it's compressed right into the middle of your speakers, and that's it. There's no dynamics. This is the kind of album that people like complain about Death Magnetic. No, Death Magnetic sounds amazing compared to Californication. It is, and both are Rick Rubin things. And I don't understand how around this time you have like the first System of a Down album, and there's one by Slayer also that I don't know why they were just like turn everything up. Oh, cool, but everything's clipping. Doesn't matter. And so that's what the production style sounds like. But in the case of Californication, not only is it like that, but literally everything is compressed. It's just such a uncomfortable album to listen to production wise, and that sucks because there's a lot of great shit on here. I agree with you on a lot of the songs. I don't really need to go in to a lot of them. So this was the beginning of when you started to get that they were kind of filtering their sound a little bit more, but we did talk about how there's some things that still harken back to their early days a little bit. They're still playing it safe here, but some of it is at least fun. And honestly, when this album came out in 1999, so I was a Chili Peppers fan, and I loved One Hot Minute. I thought One Hot Minute, still do think One Hot Minute is an amazing album. And so when this one came out, I was very sort of like, oh, all right, I guess I love the Chili Peppers, so I'm glad we got a new Chili Peppers album, but that was as far as it went for me at first. And it took a little while for it to grow on me. And some of the songs I think are fucking great. Once again, I think this also, this suffers from just being too long. If it was 10 or 11 tracks, it'd be pretty amazing because there's a lot. Not only that, there are a lot of memorable songs on here. Like just reading the song title brings a thing into your head that you remember from the song. And, I'm not really that big on Scar Tissue. It's a fine song, but it's one that I don't really need to hear again. But a lot of the other ones, Around the World, Parallel Universe, Californication, I just think that there's a lot of good shit here. But it's not going to be any higher on this list than this, because this is the portion where they did take a step into a more safe version of their stuff. And I was trying to do a little bit of research, and because I haven't read a lot of books or any books on the Chili Peppers, and I haven't read a whole lot about their history around this time. But it sounds to me like a band that went through recovery and now they're all clean. And this is the clean version of the Chili Peppers is what you're hearing here. So I know it's a dickhead thing to say, but they need to get back on drugs. I don't really mean that, because I want them to be healthy and I want them to live forever and continue to make music, because as much as I am not a fan of everything that Chili Peppers have done in the same way, I don't want there to be a world without the Chili Peppers. I like them doing shit still.
Yeah.
And it's just unfortunate that, starting with Californication, fans like me and you, but me, because I was there at the time listening to this, and it really did sort of make me go, all right, I don't know if I'm going to continue with this band, because I like some of this, but some of it I'm just like, okay, I don't. This is just not for me anymore. And sometimes you would hear people say things like, oh, they're just maturing, and when you get older, you no longer want to do the chaotic and crazy shit that you did when you were younger. I'm all like, well, now I'm 43. I still want to listen to that shit. And if I was in a band, I would still want to make that music. So what does that say? So it's not a maturity thing. It's maybe it's a complacency thing. And maybe it did have to do with recovery. Like maybe this is maybe this is what the Chili Peppers as happier people sounds like. As their lives are more in order, I guess. I don't know.
I think as well, like, I don't know what it is about the Californication era image-wise, but just there's something like hilariously alien to me about the way Anthony Kiedis looks during this time, because he never, like, he did like kind of a wacky, shorter, punky kind of thing in the early days, but for the most part, from like Uplift Mofo all the way into like One Hot Minute, he had the long, mane of hair, and then all of a sudden you've got this like short but still scruffy surfer dude that's like bleached like white blonde, and it's almost like looking at a totally different guy. Like, I know it's kind of surface level and shallow, but I thought I have to bring this up because he looks so fucking weird.
It reminds me of like when you watch like major network television shows, and they may have an episode where there's a rock guy in it, and they always have that haircut. The Anthony Kiedis, like, short but kind of messy, like, so I'm a rocker, and so it's like, I mean, we're talking about hair. Who gives a fuck? But at the same time, it does have that quality of all right, this is what you're going with. Cool, I guess. I mean, it goes with the music, I guess. It's some bands chop off their hair and then you hear it in the music that the hair got But anyway, go ahead.
It just struck me so funny that he not only chose to do that messy do, but he also went for the full on bleach blonde, and it makes him look like a totally different guy. And I suppose maybe that was part of his recovery. Maybe he needed to change things up a little bit.
Maybe so.
And that's fine, look however you want. It's just, I just thought he looked kind of weird during this time.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess all bands that we talk about, we could probably point out some point where some member of the band looked weird. But yeah.
CC DeVille, early 90s.
But he's one of them. So I don't have anything else to add for Californication. It is an album that some of the tracks have really aged well, in my opinion. I wish the production was better, and I wish it was shorter. But it's an album that if somebody really digs it, I kind of understand. But it's not as good as all of the next 6 that we're going to be talking about. So that's why it's here at number 7.
Cool. So we have arrived at the top of the bottom.
Here we go.
So this is where things are going to get spicy, because we've gone past. We have far surpassed the mild section of the peppers on sale here. We are in the fucking Carolina Reaper zone. So
all right.
So let's go for it. So my number 6 of the first 6 albums is the 6th album. I've gone for One Hot Minute.
Whoa. Damn, dude.
Yeah.
Ouch.
And that's solely based on, I think it's because this is the one I've spent the least amount of time with.
I'm going to flat out say it. I think you're insane for putting this here. I think you're going to come back later and you're going to go, all right, can I have a do-over?
But here's the catch, though. Here's the catch. I would consider everything here on a scale of 1 to 10, everything to me here is in like the 8 to 10 bracket.
Okay, I'll accept that.
I love all these 6 albums.
Same here.
One hot minute. So this album features the addition of Jane's Addiction's Dave Navarro on guitar. Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to go straight for the track by track. Warped is fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Real heavy and rocking song, like wild way to open the album.
Yeah, fucking great song.
Aeroplane is a tune. My band back in college covered it, and you bet it got the fucking booty shaking every time.
But that's a good example too of like that's a song that fits in very well with later day stuff that they did. But in this grand scheme of the album, of the songs on the album, it sounds cool as the second song on the album.
Yeah, it's like, to me, it still feels like something you could have found on Blood Sugar Sex Magic.
Yeah.
Like, you get Deep Kick.
Yes.
It's a very, very 90s alternative song.
Fuck, that's a good song.
My Friends is a nice chill song. Coffee Shop
Meet me at the coffee shop.
Oh,
we can dance like a get pop. All right.
It's like it's a full-on funk metal track. I'm not afraid to say that. It sounds a lot like System of a Down in the verses, like, but that also guitar.
Like the thing that you're I mean, you're talking about these songs, but most of these songs, they have weird shit in them, weird choices. Whereas like the verses of Warped, you can't even find the fucking rhythm in the vocals. Like where do the vocals go? And then in this one, the vocal line is a weird sort of step down thing. I'm just like, that's so cool. That's what I mean. They did so much more interesting shit. So I'm sorry. Obviously, I really like this album.
And then you get P. And P is a fun, short track of Flea singing.
Fucking what?
I love the fact that it's just him singing this little solo ditty laced with obscenities.
I love
Homophobic fucking redneck dick.
God, such a good track. And it doesn't even need to be on the album. And it's fucking great.
Oh man, One Big Mob, I'm really impressed.
Oh yeah.
This fucking album, dude, it is so good.
Yeah.
It's also a really heavy track in parts with some weird vibes in there too. You've got Walkabout is a chill, funky one. Tearjerker is a nice song.
Mm-hmm. Another softer one there.
Yeah, it's like One Hot Minute is it's a heavy
groove
grunger.
Of One Hot Minute is fucking awesome. It's so good.
Oh, man, Fallen from Grace is a sexy slow one. Shallow Be Thy Game. Funk metal mode activates. Transcending is a big old groover for an outro track.
Yeah.
This album deserves way more love than it gets.
Hell yeah. Agreed.
And to be honest, like you say, this could come up the ranking for me from in the future.
Yeah.
But it's solely based on the fact that I've spent the most time with the first 5.
Yeah, and I have to admit this one actually is a grower because at first it's such an odd album that things don't necessarily click right away. So when it came out, I remember getting it and liking aspects of it, but it became one of those things where 6 months down the line, I kept putting it back on again and again, and to the point where like my girlfriend at the time was just like, are we going to listen to this? I mean, I would listen to this fucking album again. It's like every time I listen to it, there's a new part that I fucking didn't even hear the first 20 times we listened to it.
Honestly, I think the mid-90s is the era of the grower album because you've got albums like King for a Day, Fool for a Lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, Super Unknown was a grower for me.
That's another one where repeat listens are very rewarding. Yeah.
Yeah, and also Down on the Upside as well falls into that bracket. I feel like those later Soundgarden albums have grower qualities.
We gotta hop on Soundgarden soon.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that mid-90s period, a lot of albums from say like 94 to 96, 97, that is like the biggest era that sticks out in my mind as like repeat listens are required for records of this time.
That's why whenever people talk shit about the 90s, like I'm like, sure, there was some watered down stuff. There were some also ran kind of bands. There were some bland grunge things happening. But so many bands were putting out albums that today that would never happen. They were too.
Yeah.
I don't think using the word experimental is necessarily appropriate because there's that legit experimental music. But for these bands, they were taking risks and making interesting shit that wasn't just trying to get played on the radio or trying to be number one in the iTunes chart or whatever for a week.
Yeah.
It was music that you needed to spend some time with, and that's something that I miss so much about most music today. Is that it's almost like the most bands don't want to try that hard, and even though like from what I know about the One Hot Minute time period, like there was a lot of drug problems, especially with Dave Navarro because he had a lot of issues, but. Man, I don't know. Something about this album, it's just I hear so much effort put into this, not just in making good music, but in making something unique that you don't necessarily expect, while still sounding like the Chili Peppers.
Yeah. Which is why it's such a fucking badass album, and why these first 6 are so fucking cool. Mm-hmm. So, cool. I'm gonna hand it over to you for the last one.
Awesome. So
I'm having a good time.
Yeah, this is fun. But shit, we're crossing over into where we're just going to be jerking each other off at this point when we're talking about albums, or jerking the Chili Peppers off, I guess more appropriately. But so it was really difficult to order my top 5, but this one. It easily is the bottom of the top 6, and that is the debut album from the Red Hot Chili Peppers from 1984.
Fair enough.
And it's a great record. It's a very odd record, and it was the introduction to the Chili Peppers. I mean, it's so weird. Like sometimes I forget that they were way back in 84 is when this album came out.
Yeah.
And the big reason why this album comes in the last of their classic era stuff for me is because it feels kind of lazy. Like the tempos are all kind of in this weird area where it something doesn't feel right with the songs should be faster, but they're not. And even the performances, they feel very sort of way too laid back, almost like the band were busy doing something else and they were like, hey, we got to go record an album. Oh, well, let's just do it real quick so we can just go back to doing what we were doing. And the album kind of feels like that. Like, I mean, that may have not have been the case, but when it comes to Freaky Styley On, it's way more engaging. This one just feels like they're not that excited about the music. The music doesn't feel energetic. It feels weird and funky and doesn't really sound like anything else like I think was happening at the time. So I give it that. But there's a whole lot of songs that just feel like they should be more energetic than they are. And there's also some that like I sometimes I don't even want to listen to some songs on this. You know, like I don't really need to hear "Why don't you love me like you used to do?"
But I love that one. I love that one.
I don't really need to hear that one. And even "Mommy, Where's Daddy?" I'm just kind of like, all right, it's fine.
I'm with you on that one.
But overall, like this is not a strong debut album, but it does.
Yeah.
If you're a Chili Peppers fan, it's a fun album because you hear them at the early stages of what they were doing. And so, I don't know. it's cool. I like it. It's and, if somebody wants to put on this album, I'm never going to say no. But if I'm given a choice with the first 6 albums, this is the one I'm going to go to the last. I don't really have a lot to add here because it's real. It's got a very 80s sounding production, and but it really does. It does feel like there's an oomph that's not there with this, and maybe the production is part of the problem. Maybe it doesn't come through as aggressive as it needs to come through, but it's still a fun album. It's not. They did so much better than this.
I'm trying to think. Was this was one of the records where they were kind of like at each other's throats with the producer?
It was.
I remember
it was produced by Andy Gill from the band Gang of Four.
Didn't he have like one of the songs, like one of the cassettes that they'd like recorded on labeled shit or something?
that wouldn't surprise me. Andy Gill actually died last year.
Oh shit, man!
I was actually a pretty big fan of Gang of Four for a while. The first few albums of Gang of Four, but yeah, I could see him being a person that worked with this band and thought that they were kind of a bunch of douchebags, but he worked with them anyway. But yeah, it's just one that doesn't stack up because it's like, between Californication and this album, there's a big gap, but then there's also a big gap between this album and the other 5 that we're going to talk about on the next episode.
Yeah.
So that's my number 6. So I mean, literally, like, the shit talking ends for me here. Like, once we get to next, everybody be ready for a total love fest. Probably a lot of us badly singing Anthony Kiedis vocals for most of the time, or doing mouth versions of bass lines and stuff like that. Because that's exactly what I thought of. The Higher Ground is the first thing I thought of. But I'm gonna wrap it up by reiterating what I said before. I think the Chili Peppers are a great band. The only reason I have negativity towards these things is just because, as a fan of their early stuff, it's been kind of a letdown every time they've put out an album since Californication. But like I said, if for younger people that's where they started, it's like I guess it's that way with any band that actually continues being relevant. Like, somebody comes and says, Load is my favorite Metallica album, I'd be like, there's a part of me that goes, that's weird, but then another part of me goes, I totally understand that. Like, that's where you came into the show. So, it makes sense.
I think the biggest difference, though, would be like, in this scenario, Metallica got to Load and only ever played like 2 thrash songs again, and the rest of the set was Load. Like, I think that's the thing that's happened with the Chili Peppers.
You're right. They did not do that.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing that kind of like bums me out. But aside from that, they're a great band, and nobody is actively promoting the early stuff at this point, but nobody's trying to delete it, so you can still enjoy it. So
that's very true.
Yeah,
I do. I really do wish, though, even though I'm not a big fan of remasters, I really wish that they would do deluxe kind of reissues. I know they've done versions with extra tracks and stuff. Well, I'll probably talk about some of those when we get to the next albums, but I think these albums deserve to be reissued, just with some hype behind them, and maybe they will. Maybe the Chili Peppers are just waiting for it to be 2024, and then they're going to start going back 30 years or whatever. Is it 30 years? 40? Oh, fuck! Oh shit, man.
My box set brain is kicking in again. If they do a like first 5 or 6 album box set, bam, take my money.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that wraps it up for the first half of our Red Hot Chili Peppers album ranking. For those of you who are regular listeners, peanut butter platypus to you all. And if you're new, thanks for listening. I don't. Chili Peppers is a weird thing. I don't know if we're going to get a bunch of new listeners off this band because, like I said, I don't know people that are like crazy big Chili Peppers fans. I know people that just like them or they don't like them. Anyway, anything to add before we sign off for today?
Nah. Just I think this, much like the discography, it's kind of split down the middle. This is the shit talk episode. Next episode is going to be like nothing but sheer praise.
Yeah.
Of like the early shit. But yeah,
it's literally going to be like the helmet episode was, with the first half for me going into the second half. Although I think I was a little bit more rude to Helmet than I was to Chili Peppers, but that's fine. I think Chili Peppers they've earned my respect. I'm okay with that. Plus, one day I hope that I'm best buds with Anthony and Flea. So we'll see if that happens. Once we get everybody, go out and share this podcast and tell your friends about it. So maybe we can eventually get to the point where we are able to have access to actual people from bands. And I mean, like you said, like our last little video episode, we didn't rank anything. So maybe one day Cranked and Ranked, doesn't have to be just ranking. Maybe we can have guests. Wouldn't it be cool if like Flea comes on and he ranks some stuff with us? And
hell yeah.
That's guest rankers. Oh, that would be great. Make that happen, folks. Get this shit out there in front of everybody's ears, into everybody's ears, whatever. Yes. So, and if you're watching this on YouTube, like and subscribe and comment what you feel about the Chili Peppers, and also go subscribe to Eddie Sparxx. Eddie Sparxx has been putting out a lot of shit recently. I just saw a brand new Grind Corner episode last night, which was pretty funny.
The Grind Corner is going strong.
All I'm gonna say about the last episode of Grind Corner is the thing that made me lose my shit was repeat. Like that was once you said that, I was like, that's fucking hilarious. Anyway, but you'll have to go find out yourself. Go watch Eddie Sparxx shit. But that's it for this episode of Cranked and Ranked. We'll be back with you next week with the second half of the Chili Peppers ranking. Thank you very much for listening. As usual, I am Steven Oldhead saying goodbye, and here's Mr. Eddie Sparxx taking us out.
Beep, boop, peep, poo, motherfucking later, do.